The email hit his inbox at 7:42 a.m., subject line screaming in all caps. Your book just sold out nationwide. Professor Elias Hart stared at the screen, coffee halfway to his lips, frozen. One day, 24 hours since release, and Shadows We Share, his quiet, aching novel about two men learning to love without apology, was gone from every major bookstore and online retailer. Gone. He set the mug down too hard. Ceramic clinked against oak. His office at Emerson College smelled of old paper and rain-soaked afternoons, the kind Seattle delivered without asking permission. Outside, the quad was already buzzing with undergrads in hoodies, oblivious. His phone vibrated. Department chair, then agent, then a string of notifications from social media he rarely checked. Shadows We Share, trending. Photos of empty shelves in Portland, Chicago, New York. A video of a line wrapping around an indie bookstore in Austin. People holding signs that read, "We want more Elias Hart." Elias laughed once, short and disbelieving. Then the second wave arrived, the hate. Anonymous accounts first. Another woke professor shoving agenda down throats. This is why higher ed is dying. Screenshots of his faculty page circulated with red circles around the bio line. Elias Hart teaches 20th century American literature. He lives in Seattle with his partner. Partner. He had never hidden it, not really, but he had never shouted it either. The book was fiction, or so he told himself when he wrote the acknowledgments. No dedication, no 4J, just a simple line, to the ones who stayed quiet too long. Now the quiet was over. By noon, the English department hallway felt different. Colleagues who usually nodded politely now paused, eyes flicking between curiosity and something sharper. Dr. Marianne Cole from Victorian Lit stopped by his door. "Elias," she said, voice careful. "Congratulations are in order, I suppose." He looked up from grading a stack of essays he hadn't touched. "Suppose so." She leaned against the frame. "It's brave, writing something so personal." Personal. The word landed like a stone in still water. "It's fiction, Marianne." "Of course." She smiled thin. "But fiction has a way of bleeding." She left. Elias exhaled slowly. That evening he walked home through Capitol Hill, collar up against the drizzle. The city lights smeared on wet pavement. His apartment was on the third floor of a brick building that had seen better decades. Inside, the living room was dim, lit only by a single lamp and the blue glow of his laptop. Julian was already there, shoes kicked off, socks mismatched as always. He looked up from the couch, phone in hand. "You saw?" Elias asked. Julian nodded. "Saw. Read. Scrolled until my eyes hurt." "And?" Julian set the phone down. "Proud of you. Also terrified for you." Elias crossed the room, dropped beside him. Their shoulders touched. Familiar weight. Julian smelled like cedar soap and a faint trace of hospital antiseptic. 12-hour shift in the ER. "They're calling me a groomer," Elias said quietly. "Some are saying I shouldn't be allowed near students." Julian turned to face him. "They're loud. Doesn't make them right. But it makes them heard." Silence settled between them, heavy but not unfamiliar. They had been together 7 years. 7 years of quiet mornings, shared groceries, arguments over thermostat settings. 7 years of Julian's steady presence, anchoring Elias when the world felt too loud. Julian reached for his hand. Fingers laced. "You wrote the truth. That's what matters." Elias looked at their joined hands. "I wrote a story. Not my story." Julian's thumb brushed over Elias's knuckles. "You sure about that?" Elias didn't answer. The next morning the provost called him in. The provost's office overlooked Puget Sound, gray and restless under low clouds. Dr. Rebecca Lang sat behind her desk, hands folded, expression neutral in the practiced way of administrators everywhere. "Elias," she began, "the board has received concerns." He sat straight, tie he rarely wore suddenly too tight. "Concerns about what, exactly?" "About the content of your book and its potential impact on the learning environment." He almost laughed. "It's a novel. Fiction. Yes, but fiction written by a tenured professor and promoted on your faculty page. I didn't promote it on the faculty page. Your agent did. Linked it in the bio update last month. Elias felt heat rise in his chest. So now my agent is the problem? No. The problem is perception. She slid a printout across the desk. A petition. 300 signatures already. Demanding review of Professor Hart's suitability to teach courses involving young adults. He scanned the text. Words like grooming, indoctrination, safeguarding students. These are anonymous, he said. Some are. Some aren't. She paused, including 2 from current students. The room tilted slightly. Ooh, I can't disclose that. Of course not. Rebecca leaned forward. I'm not suspending you. Not yet. But I need you to understand the optics. We're in a climate where a gay man writing about gay men is suddenly a threat. She didn't flinch. Where anything can be weaponized. Elias stared at the petition. And if I take the book down, pretend it never happened. That ship has sailed. It's already in libraries. On Kindles. In people's hands. He stood. Then what do you want from me? Discretion. For now. No interviews. No panels. Let it breathe. He nodded once, left without another word. Outside, the wind off the water cut through his coat. He walked to the ferry terminal, bought a ticket to Bainbridge Island he had no intention of using, just to sit somewhere quiet. On the bench, phone buzzed again. Julian, you okay? Elias typed back, not really. Come home when you can. I'll make soup. Simple words. They anchored him. That night, they ate tomato basil soup on the couch, TV muted. Julian's legs across Elias's lap. You remember sophomore year? Julian asked suddenly. Elias raised an eyebrow. Which one? Mine. When I realized I wasn't straight. Elias set the bowl down. You told me you cried in the dorm shower, so your roommate wouldn't hear. Julian smiled faintly. Yeah, and then I met you at that awful open mic. You read that poem about bridges. I thought, this guy's going to break my heart or save it. Turn out both. Mostly save. Julian paused. You never told me why you wrote the book now. After all these years of saying you wouldn't. Elias looked at the ceiling. Because I was tired of pretending the stories weren't mine too. Julian shifted closer. Then own it. All of it. The next week classes resumed. Elias walked into his American Lit seminar, 23 students watching him more closely than usual. He set his bag down. Before we start, anyone want to talk about the elephant? A hand went up. Sophie Nguyen, Jr., always front row. Professor Hart, she said, voice steady. Is it true you're getting fired over your book? The room held its breath. Elias met her eyes. No, not fired. But there are questions. Another hand. Marcus Reed, usually quiet. Are you going to stop writing? Elias exhaled. No. Marcus nodded once. Good. The tension eased just a fraction. They opened to Hemingway. But the air felt different. Charged. After class, Sophie lingered. I'm gay, she said simply. Your book made me feel less alone. Thank you. Elias swallowed. You're welcome. She left. He stood in the empty classroom a long time. The first protest happened outside the humanities building on a Thursday. Signs. Megaphones. Protect our kids. Keep ideology out of classrooms. Elias watched from his office window, heart hammering. Security stood between the group and the doors. He recognized a few faces, not students. Local activists who showed up whenever anything smelled like culture war. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered anyway. Professor Hart? This is Lauren from the Seattle Times. We'd love a comment on. No comment. He hung up. Julian texted. Saw the news. Leaving work early. Meet you at home? Elias typed yes. That night, they argued for the first time in months. You can't just ignore it, Julian said, pacing the kitchen. They're outside your building. What am I supposed to do? Hold a press conference? Maybe. Or at least talk to someone who isn't trying to tear you down. Elias rubbed his temples. Talking makes it bigger. It's already big. Silence. Julian stopped pacing. I don't want to lose you to this. Elias looked up sharply. You're not losing me. Aren't I? You're shutting down. I can see it. Elias stood. Crossed him. I'm scared, okay? I'm fucking terrified they'll take the one thing I've built, my job, my students, because I wrote a book about love. Julian's eyes softened. Then let me stand with you. They embraced. Elias buried his face in Julian's shoulder. The world outside kept shouting. Inside, it was quiet again. The next morning, Elias found an envelope slipped under his office door. No name. Inside, a single printed page. A photo of him and Julian at Pride 2 years ago, laughing, arms around each other. Underneath, typed in block letters, "We know where you live." Elias's hands shook. He called campus security. They took a report, promised to increase patrols. He didn't tell Julian. Instead, he started carrying the photo in his bag, folded small, like evidence he might need later. Classes continued. Students asked careful questions. Some brought coffee. Others avoided eye contact. One afternoon after lecture, a young man waited by the door. Freshman, nervous. "Professor Hart, I'm unlike the guys in your book." Elias waited. "I don't know what to do. My parents, they wouldn't understand." Elias felt the weight of the moment. "You don't have to tell them until you're ready. Or ever, if that's what keeps you safe." The kid nodded. Tears welled. "Your book helped. More than you know." Elias reached out, squeezed his shoulder once. "You're not alone." The kid left. Elias leaned against the wall, breathing hard. That night, he told Julian about the photo. Julian went very still. "We need to move." "No." "Elias." "No, I'm not running." Julian stared at him. "This isn't bravery. This is stubbornness." "Maybe both." They didn't speak for the rest of the evening. The twist came quietly. An email from his agent at 6:14 p.m. "Elias, we have a problem. Someone leaked an early draft. Different ending. Very different." He opened the attachment. The leaked pages showed an alternate version of the novel's climax. In the published book, the two protagonists choose each other openly, against family disapproval, and find fragile peace. In the draft, one leaves. Permanently. The other is left broken, regretting every silence. And in the acknowledgments of that draft, a single line he had deleted months before release. "For Julian, who stayed when I almost didn't." Elias felt the floor drop. Julian had never read the early drafts. Elias had made sure of that. But someone had. He called his agent. "Who has access?" "Only me, you, and the editor at the press. We signed NDAs." "Then how?" "I don't know. But it's everywhere now. Twitter, Reddit, blogs saying you're a fraud. That the real story is you almost left your partner." Elias hung up. He found Julian in the bedroom, scrolling on his phone, face pale. "You saw," Elias said. Julian looked up. "Yeah. It was an old draft. I changed it because—" "Because what?" Julian's voice cracked. "Because you almost did leave?" Elias sat on the edge of the bed. 3 years ago, I was scared. Of everything. Of being seen. Of losing the career I'd built. I thought maybe it would be easier alone." Julian laughed, bitter. "Easier? I didn't go. But you thought about it. Long enough to write that ending." Elias reached for him. Julian pulled back. "I need space," Julian said quietly. "Just tonight." He left the apartment. Door clicked shut softly. Elias sat in the dark for hours. The next day, the college announced an investigation. Not into his teaching, into whether the leaked draft constituted inappropriate personal disclosure. He met with his union rep. They advised caution. No statements. Students started a counter-petition. Thousands of signatures in days. Let Elias teach. The contrast was surreal. Julian came home after 2 nights at a friend's place. They sat at the kitchen table. "I read the whole leaked draft," Julian said. Elias waited. "You wrote me leaving because that's what you feared most. Not me leaving you. You leaving me." Elias nodded. Julian exhaled. "I forgive you, but I need you to promise something. Anything. No more hiding. Not from me. Not from anyone." Elias took his hand. "I promise." They held on tight. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in late spring. Emerson's largest lecture hall, open to faculty and students. Media barred, but live-streamed internally. Elias wore the same tie from the provost meeting. Julian sat in the front row, steady gaze. The panel asked questions. Measured. Polite. Did he intend to influence students with his writing? No. He wrote to understand himself. Did he regret publishing? No. Would he continue teaching material that might be seen as controversial? Yes, literature was meant to challenge. A student from the back stood during Q&A. "Professor Hart," she said, "your book saved my life. Literally, I was going to drop out. Hurt myself. Reading it showed me there was a future where I could be okay." The room went quiet. Another student stood. Then another. Stories poured out. Quiet voices. Brave ones. When it ended, the panel recessed. Outside, Julian pulled Elias into a hug. "You did good," Elias whispered. "I didn't do anything. You stayed." The decision came a week later. No sanctions. Full confidence reaffirmed. But Elias knew it wasn't over. The culture didn't change with one vote. He started a new manuscript that night. Not fiction this time. Memoir. Julian read the first pages. Smiled. Title. Elias looked at him. "The Quiet We Broke." Julian kissed him. Soft. Sure. Summer arrived. Seattle bloomed. They walked the waterfront, hands brushing. Elias felt lighter. Not fixed. Not perfect. But honest. Years later, 5 to be exact, Elias stood at a podium in a packed bookstore in New York. His third book, the memoir. The crowd was mixed. Old friends, new readers, students who had graduated long ago. He read the final passage. "We don't choose love because it's easy. We choose it because it's true. And truth, once spoken, cannot be unspoken." Applause. Afterward, a young man approached. Early 20s. Nervous smile. "I read your first book in college," he said. "It made me come out to my dad. He didn't take it well, but he tried. We're okay now." Elias smiled. "I'm glad." The young man hesitated. "Thank you for not staying quiet." Elias nodded. "Thank you for listening." Later, on the train home to Seattle, Julian asleep against his shoulder, Elias watched the landscape blur past. He thought about the boy he had been. Afraid. Silent. He thought about the man he became. Not a hero, just someone who finally spoke. The train hummed on, and for the first time in a long time, the quiet felt like peace. A personal note. Stories like Elias's aren't rare. They're just rarely told without filters. We live in times when honesty about love, especially between men, can still cost you dearly. Jobs, safety, peace of mind. Yet the act of telling, of refusing silence, ripples farther than any single backlash. It reaches the kid in a small town reading undercovers, the colleague afraid to bring their partner to the holiday party, the parent wondering if understanding is still possible. The courage isn't loud. It's persistent. It says, "I exist, and my love is not a threat." If this story lingers with you, let it remind you, your truth doesn't need permission. It only needs air. Speak it gently, fiercely, whenever you're ready. The world shifts one honest sentence at a time.